Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Ted Stewart. We are discussing today the applications of Site Safety Index. This is the third webinar we are doing on this discussion, so let's go ahead and get started. My name is Ted Stewart. I am the Program Development and Compliance Manager here at exida. I wear a lot of different hats. I help manage the OEM product certification group. I assist the end user business, manage the CFSC program, which is now with the help of Megan Foose and Melissa Chrisman. They are now taking this responsibility over for me, which I'm extremely thankful for. And I also have experience in automation systems, manufacturing, and lean process improvement. exida is a global company. As if you've seen webinars before, we always like to do a quick introduction to our company in case you are new. You'll see a lot of these red dots popping up more and more over the next years or two because of the fact that we are growing, and we're growing very fast, and we're very excited about that. And we like to think it's because we are on the right track. And the more people we help, the more it benefits us as well. exida, here's our industry focus. You can see we go anywhere from the OEM, where we help with the products, all the way to the end user side with the consulting. We also have software that our end users love to use, which is, you see at the bottom there, Excellentia, SILStat, and we really do anything within the safety lifecycle. We've also branched out to alarm management, cybersecurity, and we also have personnel certification, which you'll see here. These are our main products, or a suite of services that we do offer from consulting side, which is the end user business. We do help in 61511 jobs, machinery, 62061, automotive, 26262. We do alarm management help, and then cybersecurity. The software that we do offer in the engineering tools is Excellentia, which is compiled of FACS, Cell Selection, LOPA-X, SRS, Cell Verification, and then many others that you see there. We do have product certification. And today's webinar is really going to be on the end user side, which is that first box you see there. But just to touch on the other suite of products we have, the product certification is kind of our bread and butter. We have training, where we have a training course somewhere held in the world at least once a week. We have reference materials, which is your tutorials, textbooks, your reference books. And if there's anything that you guys feel isn't covered very well, let us know, because we're more about educating. And that's one of our biggest things, is helping people understand, because there's a lot to learn in functional safety. And then we also have the professional certification, the CFSC program. And that is also growing very rapidly, and we're opening it up to more and more areas. And we are actually in discussions opening up a new specialty for certification. So that is also something very new. This was a fun survey that we received. There's an organization called ARC Advisory Group, and just last year in November they did a study in all the certifying bodies out there, and they did a pie chart, you see, on the top certifying bodies out there globally. And so they did the survey, and what the survey stated, it came back and it said, we're very proud of this because we didn't realize the numbers were this great, is in the world, exida is the leading process industry certifying body. And the orange side there, you'll see all the different TUV organizations were also were up there. And of the top 3 TUV organizations, those 3 combined made up the orange area, and we alone were the blue area. So we're very proud of that. And we want to say thank you to everybody that has believed in us along the way. Okay, the topic you guys are on this call. We're going to start talking about something called the Site Safety Index. And before I get into it, I kind of want to just say why this term came up and what we're doing about it. Well, failure rate differences from site to site, right? So what happened was a number of field failure studies have shown that the failure rate for identical modules in the same industry application have indicated that there's actually a difference in failure rates for the same product from site to site. So you have the same product, you could put it in this company and then the same branch of that company at a different location, and you're going to get different failure rates. And that is why, and typically we're finding the ratio. We thought it was less, but the more and more we do this, it's actually between 2 and 4 times difference depending on the product type, which is kind of extreme. And we want to say, well, why is this happening? So we've started doing a lot of research into this to try and to find out why people are getting different failure rates from sites when they have the same product. So you'll see down there, the other bullet point shows site audits have shown that there are many differences in how things are being done at these different facilities, and this impacts the safety instrumented system. A key metric for process industry designs is what many people already know, the probability of failure on demand, that PFD average. After many studies, what we have found that, through these field failure and proof test reports, there are several variables that have been identified as a key to a realistic PFD calculation. Now, these parameters, what happens is because of these key variables, many people have an optimistic metric calculation, which results in a very unsafe design. And that's kind of what we're going to go through today is this webinar. It'll identify key variables that need to be included in this PFD average calculation for a model, which is including that impact of the site-to-site variation, which we call Site Safety Index, SSI. And you'll see down here at the bottom, there is a white paper. If you go to the exida site, you can get it for free. You can read it into more detail. I'm just going to touch on some of the key variables for PFD calculation, but if you want to know more in depth, you can go here. And then also next month at AICHI, we are also going to have 2 other white papers in regards to this topic because of the growing need. All right, there are 9 variables that we have found that are key that will impact the PFD average, okay? And as I go through here, number 8 of those is the Site Safety Index. However, you're going to notice that many of these variables aren't on the manufacturer side; they're on the end user side. Okay, and so now let's go through. Of these 7, because the last 2 aren't related to the end user as far as the variance there. The failure rates of each product, right? The failure rates will change depending on how the end user has their processes in place. We do know that the proof test intervals will change if they don't do things correctly. The effectiveness obviously is going to change. The duration is going to probably stay the same because that's actually set. We want to do this test at this amount of length. Vision time is always going to be here, so there's no real variance there. However, the mean time to restore will change. Let's say the engineer can't figure out how to operate something in a need of emergency, and then the initial failure, of course, will also change. So we're going to go through and do some examples, some examples as to how those are affected. But I just want to say, the Site Safety Index model, it's going to account for the differences between these targets, and we're going to use it during the conventional calculation. And the reality, right? So there's 2 different things there of the site due to the impact of the operational processes, and this is pretty important here. So now, why is this important? Well, we kind of touched on it a little bit as to why it's so important. But the key variables in this PFD calculation are impacted by the site operational practices. Okay. Oh, and before I get too far into that, I do want to see, because I'm seeing some here, please ask questions. I'm going to answer all the questions at the end. So if you don't mind, bear with me. And those questions that you are asking right now will be answered at the end. So thank you very much. All right, let's continue here. So a model can now show that this impact could be used to show the benefit of an improved operational process. And the life cycle cost comparisons can be done to justify improved operational process. So what I'm trying to say is there are a lot of companies out there that are doing the right thing. They're getting their product certified. End users are now taking notice of that. They're making these certified systems. However, if you make everything up front, you make all these certified products, you make the certified system, everything looks great. However, if you're not operating it correctly and you're not following procedures, you're almost just canceling out everything great you just did for your process. So That's what we want to make sure. We want to bring awareness to this, and that's where the Site Safety Index came from. It's a model. It's a simple approach based on concepts from IEC 61508, and what it does, it's going to more accurately account for site-specific operational practices. And and what this is going to do for all those people doing it right, we're going to give you guys credit. Now this allows a site with a strong safety process to actually take credit for the accomplishment while not masking other issues at other sites. Okay, so you'll now be able to, because in the past I know without us being able to judge this, you can take a more pessimistic approach because that some sites are going to do things differently, and you got to take worst case. But now you don't have to take worst case. Now you can take the case per site to make sure that those sites are getting the credit they deserve. So how does this all work? Well, first I want to start off with showing you guys the different levels. There's 5 levels, right? You start at the top, right? SSI 4. It's kind of like SIL 4. SSI 4 might be too much. It might not be worth implementing because it might take too much time to do things this way. And so we don't see too many companies taking the time to become an SSI 4. And I'll read quickly what it is. It basically means you're perfect, right? Your repairs are always correctly performed. Testing's always done correctly. It's always on schedule. The equipment's always replaced before the end of useful life. The equipment's always selected according to the specific environmental limits. The electrical power supplies are always cleaned. Your pneumatic supplies and hydraulic fluids are always kept clean. So this is basically saying this is absolutely perfect. It's brand new out of the box and always stays that way. And your engineers or your maintenance engineers are always perfect in everything they do. Okay, but let's say SSI 3. I do see, and I've also audited companies that I feel deserve SSI 3. This is almost perfect. Your repairs are correctly performed, testing is done correctly and on schedule. The equipment is normally selected based on specific environmental limits. You're basically a very, very, very good company. Your processes are great. Is what SSI 3 means. SSI 2, I see is the majority. Okay, this is still really good. Your repairs are usually correctly performed. Testing is done correctly. It's mostly on schedule. This might be a product where it's not critical to have everything perfect, and that's okay. But this is where I feel without these bases, failure rates were driven on SSI 2. So when we give a certificate, we're assuming that the end users there have about an SSI 2, which is a great thing, because we have seen sites that are more down to the SSI 1 level, and there have been instances where there is an SSI 0. But we've never had a way to factor in these failure rates. SSI 1, well, it's medium. Many repairs are correctly performed. Testing is done. It's mostly on schedule. Some equipment is replaced before end of use life. Some isn't. But like I said, it's probably because the system they have in place isn't critical. It's nothing that's really going to do too much harm if they don't do it perfect. And to them, that is okay. And that's fine. But do expect higher failure rates. And that's the one thing we need to take into consideration. Okay. Now, there's several factors that have been identified thus far, which impacts the Site Safety Index. Okay, and here are some of them. You have the equipment selection and qualification. All right, you can see variances there. Commission tests can impact it. Site validation tests, proof test procedures, proof test documentation. You're going to see here failure diagnostic and repair procedures, device useful life tracking and replacement process, and of course there's many others when you get into the SIS modification procedures and so forth. So what we're going to do is show you that we'll go into the number 2 in a little more detail so you can kind of see some examples, but there are 2 things that you can do to evaluate your site. The first thing is you can have somebody come in to establish your SSI ranking. What would happen is an engineer would come in, an experienced engineer would come in, they'd ask a series of questions, they would review processes, we will audit the documentation produced, and we'll give a score results. It's basically on a detailed report, with also a report on recommendations for improving and how to better that site. And there's a lot of technical questions that will be asked. It's very in-depth. However, if let's say, okay, that sounds great. Yeah, that's something we probably need to do because third party is always, you know, people start listening when it's a third party. It's hard to, if you're in that company and you're going to go down to the floor and say, hey man, you should really be doing it this way. There's not so much impact where if you have somebody else come out and come in and say, look, here's why you need to do it this way. However, first steps, I love first steps, and I do believe in getting people moving in the right direction. And so that's why we created a questionnaire, a simple questionnaire, and you can actually go and do it yourself. We have some initial questions. Yeah, it's less accurate. However, it's something you could do in your own time to see where you stand now. It's completely free. This actually just got up and running yesterday with the website version. Many people have been waiting for this, so I can now officially say, hey, it's out there. If you go to exida.com/SSI, you'll be able to achieve it. At the end, I'll put the website up again so you can have it. But this is where you can go to see how your site's doing and see where you fall. All right. And then also, of course, I do have previous webinars where you can go there as well to see more questions, specifically this one here down at the bottom. I go through a little more, I go through a bunch of questions. However, now that we have the website up, you get all the questions. Not all for the number one option. I mean, it goes way more into depth. However, for what you need to know to complete this questionnaire, the simple one, that's perfect. So how does it work? All right, so let's say you go to this website and you start seeing all these questions. Well, you're going to have questions that are like this in front of you. There's 3 or 4 different responses. I don't know if we put NA on the online version, but you always have always. Do you do something often, or do you do it sometimes, close to never, like rarely? And so those are the 3 main ones, or maybe you don't do it at all. But I would just put number 3 for that. So what it is, it's a weighted scoring system that adds points for each question and answer. The resulting score is then evaluated per the 5 ranges to provide this SSI number. And then at the end, it's going to conclude and say, hey, congratulations, you're an SSI 3. You're an SSI 2. Great job. And so that's how this SSI works, scoring system. So in this questionnaire, there's going to be 5 different categories. And I'll kind of give a couple quick questions just to show what you would see in a typical set of topics here. But we're going to ask you about your installation and commissioning. We'll ask you about the safety validation. We'll ask you about operation and maintenance, modification, and decommissioning, right? Just some of the main broad topics. So what would you see in installation and commissioning? Well, let's say, does your site do a plan that includes all activities required for installation and commissioning? Yes, no, maybe. Do your commissioning activities include confirming the earthing or grounding, that it has actually been properly connected? Maybe I didn't think about that before. Or yeah, of course it does. And then your commissioning activities include confirming and documenting all field devices are operational and calibrated? Maybe sometimes the calibrated part isn't so critical, so you don't worry about the equipment being calibrated. I don't know. Per site, it's different. So that's some questions there. Let's go into the safety validation. Does your SIS validation planning include the people? Does it include the departments and organizations responsible for those activities? Do you have it somewhere? Do you have it written somewhere? Does your SIS validation planning include a pass-fail criteria, including required processes and operator input signals with their sequences and their values? I mean, it's almost like, well, of course I do. But think about it. See if all of your areas include something like this. All right. And so those are just a couple questions there for validation. If we go into operation and maintenance, do your operation and maintenance procedures include all routine actions which need to be carried out to maintain the as-designed functional safety of that SIS? I put an example in here, adhering to proof test intervals defined by this the SIL determination. Another question could be, do your operation and maintenance procedures include the information which needs to be maintained on device failures, proof test results, false trips, demand rates, and restore times on the SIS, and some of these, I know when I go through them and when I do audits for manufacturers, I keep these things in mind to help manufacturers relay messages over to the end users that, yeah, they might be buying a certified product, but if they don't have the procedures in place, they're kind of hurting themselves. Actually, they're really hurting themselves. What about modification? Do your procedures have modifications for this SIS? Do your procedures include a clear method of identifying and requesting the work to be done and identifying the hazards which may be affected? Sure, you might have this modification procedure in place, but do the technicians or whoever's work on these devices, do they know what to look for to identify hazards? Does your modification activity only begin with proper authorization, or can someone just go ahead and get moving on it, make a change, or do they have to go through the right protocols, get things signed off? What about decommissioning? Do you have procedures in place for decommissioning a SIS? Right? Maybe you have something, maybe you don't. Maybe you kind of have something. Do you execute an analysis of the impact on functional safety as a result of decommissioned activity? So like I said, these are just some real quick questions, things that you can expect to see when you go and do this on your own, and also definitely expect to see if you were to have somebody come in and do an audit on your facility. And a lot of things are discovered. It's very interesting when you have an outside eyes looking in, and it helps improve your process. So now, how are these key variables that we talked about, how are they impacted by the site? Well, first you're going to have failure rates. They're going to be different on each product. Actual proof test intervals will change. The actual effectiveness of that proof test will be different. Your mean time to restore will not be the same from site to site, and the probability of initial failure will change. So now let's go into each one of these and kind of give like an example as what we have found. So field failures of each product. Well, field failure studies based on billions of unit operating hours at exit indicate a failure rate multiplication factor between 2 and 4 from site to site, and this is depending on the product type, right? So some do more, some more variant than others, and like I said, it's the importance of that product. If it needs to be checked all the time, or if it doesn't need to be checked all the time, then maybe you will see a high multiplication factor. And this is basically comparing between an SSI 0 to an SSI 4. Okay. What happens with an actual proof test interval? In-site surveys done by exida already, it was apparent that proof tests were postponed in sites where a high level of operational discipline was not present. So if someone's not over the back of that person saying, hey, we need to make sure we do this proof test, we can do it later. Everything's working fine. It's at a critical time. It's the end of the month. We need to get this done. We'll postpone it again. Things were getting postponed, and because of that, your proof test intervals are increased. All right, and that's why if they get increased, you're going to start seeing a lower SSI level. What about the effectiveness? Proof test effectiveness decreases when procedures are not clear and test personnel do not have the sufficient time to perform and document testing. If we have people in situations where they're too busy, they're overworked, that proof test, if they delay it, the effectiveness of that proof test actually will decrease in lower levels of SSI, which makes sense. Okay, it's not going to be worth as much if it's not done correctly, if it's not done on time, and that's going to hurt over the long run of that product or that system. What about the mean time to restore? Of course, this is going to get increased. All right, mean time to restore may increase when a diagnostic procedures are not well documented, understood. MTTR will increase when proper tools are not readily available. All right, if you don't have them in an organized place, or if you don't have a checkout system, some restore efforts will not be successful when personnel do not have the sufficient time to perform and document results. Obviously, then a second effort is needed. So that will be something when you're going through this questionnaire, you're going to notice that MTTR will increase when you start noticing a lower SSI level. What about the probability of initial failure? Well, products are used and a safety instrumented function may not operate properly if they have not been installed correctly, calibrated correctly, tested during that complete commissioning process. Sounds like common sense, but when you think about it and you put a human factor into things, look, it's going to happen. And when procedures are not clear, it might be clear to one person, but if it's not clear to the person that needs to look at it, the time isn't available, they might be overworked. Probability of initial failure will increase. All right, and like I said, it will increase in lower SSI levels. So going back to what we just spoke about, the Site Safety Index will be a model to help predict variations in these key variables within regards to the failure rates of the product, the actual proof test intervals, the effectiveness, your mean time to restore, and the initial failure. So the Site Safety Index model, what it's going to do, it's going to now provide a more realistic PFD results, okay? Compared to the old way where you just simply adjust failure rates, this approach will now allow a site with a strong safety process to take credit for the accomplishments whilst not masking issues at other sites, okay? Because before you had to take worst case. Now you don't have to take worst case. You can take the case for that site. This can now show the impact of different operational policies. You can now show proof. It can be used to show the benefit of an approved operational process, and it can be used now to justify and improve. You can justify, which is a great word, justify the improved operational process, where if you're trying to pitch something to upper management, you can say, hey, look, if we do things this way, look at our results. Look at the savings we can have. Look at the how we lowered our spurious trips. Look at these dangerous detected failures. We can now lower them simply if we change our procedures to do this instead of this. So what I'd like to do, and this is the first time we're sharing with this, is show basically a live actual example. This is something we did show. We were working with an organization, and we showed them how their product changes according to what SSI level they're at. And right here, you can compare the FMETA predicted failure rates for a solenoid valve. Note that there's in this report, it said there's options 4 through 6, which is to predict failure rates in a dynamic applications where the solenoid valve moves frequently. Okay, so those are high demand. What I'd like to do is simply let's stick to just option 1, and we can show the differences with option 1 if you were an SSI 4 or like an SSI 2. All right, this is a Type A device. And you'll see here, okay, at an SSI 2, which is common, which is good, which is average, which is where most people will be, because that's all they need to be in their eyes. All right. Option 1, let's take a look at the dangerous undetected failures. Okay, in an SSI 2, which is very good site maintenance policies, they will have a delta. Look at the bottom left if you need to know what these lambdas mean. But DU means what? It means failed dangerous undetected. Okay. You can also look at the safe as well. Look at the safe undetected, because a lot of people are more interested in spurious trips. So you got 542 and you got 282. Now all of a sudden, in an SSI 2. Now all of a sudden, let's go to the SSI 4. Wow, look at the difference here. If that site goes to an SSI 4 and they have all the procedures in place, look, it's drastically reduced. You know, now you have your DUs at 142. All right, and your SUs at 325. So if you didn't catch the differences there, at an SSI 2 compared to an SSI 4, and just if you guys think that you're in between the two, just do your own, or you can when you go and you can do the calculations, which will be in Excellencia as well. You can see here, look at the difference here. Almost a 50% reduction in failure rates for dangerous undetected from an SSI 2 to an SSI 4. What we've noticed is that many certifying bodies, they actually assume everybody's an SSI 4, right? Which helps reduce failure rates. It was kind of an aha moment for us when we realized, well, look, our failure rates are higher, but why? Well, here's one reason why. We assume everyone's an SSI 2 because that's a more realistic approach. Anyway, so you'll see here, look at the failure rates, look at the spurious trips, how if you have a better procedure in place, you get less spurious trips, which is great. You increase your run time. You don't have to always be down if something false trips. All right, and then once again, what is the impact? Well, results in Excellencia can vary by entire cell levels when SSI is changed from an SSI 4 to an SSI 2. And, people say, oh, I'm operating at a CL 3, but in reality, if your processes are in place and you're not following your proof tests, and you're a little slow, you're delaying things, you actually might be operating at a whole SIL level less. So keep that in mind. And real quick, in conclusion, this is all I really wanted to touch on today's webinar because I know everyone's very busy at the end of the month. Many people have an end of the quarter coming up. But I needed to get this information across. I wanted to just get out on the internet and make it public so that we can now talk about it freely. But the SSI website is right there, exida.com, SSI. And that does conclude my discussion today. And if there are some questions, which I see they're coming in, so thank you very much. Let me, okay, great. The first question I have here, and please go ahead and type your questions, is, how frequently are these audits for SSI, should they be carried out? Right now, there is nothing even to say right now that these need to be carried out. However, we've seen a need and we need to address that need. I personally would say, well, how often is this product certified? What's certified, if it's within exida, usually within every 3 years. So I would say you don't need to do it more than that. If it was my own, this is my own personal opinion, I would say as these products are getting recertified, I think the site should be looked at. It can be at the level where you have a consultant come in, or it can be at the level where you just simply go to this website and you do your own evaluation. But I think every 3 years is a good thumb mark, because what I've seen lately is, especially with operators, is you do have a turnaround in people and personnel, and this impacts personnel. So as your personnel change, you should reevaluate your site, because people will do things differently. Some people may read that procedure differently, and there's going to be a lot to be learned on your site. So I would say every 3 years, you'll probably have a decent turnaround for an average business that we see. It's actually more like 5 years, but 3 to 5 years is when you have a lot of turnaround. So that would be my answers. But every 3 to 5 years, you should have this reevaluated to make sure you're where you feel you are. Good question. I can actually do some more analysis on that as well. So how is SSI accounted for in Excellentia? In there currently, and we are going to release a new version of Excellentia, and when we do, SSI will be in there, and you'll see it nice and bold. But I believe right now it's MCI. There is a device in there called MCI. It doesn't have all the factors in place, but if you go in there, I believe we call it the Maintenance Capability Index. And don't quote me on that, but there is something in there. And what I will do is, because every question I receive today, I will send out the answers to everybody in a Word document or a PDF, and I will give you the answers in there. I will tell you exactly how you see it in Excellentia today, so you don't have to wait for anything. And I just see here, what is the difference between MCI and SSI? Right on point. Thank you for asking that question. It's basically the boundaries, how in depth the MCI goes. For the SSI, really, SSI is far more in depth. It's going to be far more accurate. MCI was really a pessimistic approach to help people that wanted to get a more accurate failure rate. However, when we go about doing the implementing SSI into Excellentia, you're gonna have much more redefined values and more accurate failure rates for each site. The survey will help you, and we can help with the calculations as well, so that you can see how your failure rates will be adjusted. And if you want, personally send me an email, and I can get you a little more information on that as well. And yes, that is accurate. Right now, everybody that has Excellentia, you will only see MCI. But use that. Please use that. A lot of people just overlook it, but that is very important. And treat it as, what if I were recommending to you, treat MCI like SSI. So if you go there and you have an SSI of 2, put MCI 2. And just kind of see where you stand for now. That's going to be great, because this stuff that we're talking about today is cutting edge. It's new, but it's something we've needed for such a long time. I have a question here. Are you not mixing up random failures and systematic failures by using a factor on failure rates? No, I think the confusion there might be, and here's one of the bigger discussions, not for this webinar, but what is a systematic failure and what is a random failure? Because what we've noticed and what we're going to the committee about is this term is widely interpreted differently. So what I might think is a random, you might think is a systematic. And I know on a global aspect, I believe, in my opinion, in the United States, we feel that there are more random failures, and in other countries, they feel there's only systematic. And so it's kind of how do you define what one is. So to be honest, I can't really answer that question. I'll try to offline get you a better response, but I don't believe I'm mixing anything up. However, it can be interpreted differently. A question here is, can you show the questions asked? Right now. What I'll do for you is after this webinar, I'm going to show you every single question with an answer. So that'll help clear up that question for you. You will see every single question asked with a question. Oh, and thanks for the nice comment. I appreciate that. When will the new version be available? I will do my best. I'll go talk to our software developers, and in my email back to everybody, I will let you know when the release date is expected. And I did not know that IEC 61511-2016 is released now. If that is true, I am going to go buy a copy of it. I did not believe that is yet released. If it is, thank you for that tidbit. I was anxiously waiting for this new release, so thank you. All right, that is all the questions. If you want to ask more questions, thank you. Please put them through, or you see there at the bottom of my screen, there's my email address, and also the SSI website if you want to go there. However, feel free to keep emailing me. I appreciate everyone. The last time I did this, I got a bunch of extra emails afterwards. I have one more still to answer. If you're on this webinar, you know who you are. I'm trying to get to them. Yeah, this is fantastic. I appreciate everyone's support, and I will send out all the answers to these questions along with the presentation. So thank you so much. Have a great day. I'll be doing this again in about 6 hours, another live one. So if you want to get back and ask live questions, please feel free. Thanks again. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye for now.